Good evening and welcome to Wednesday Night Live, Royal Oak First's monthly news and entertainment magazine on the life of what's happening here at the church. It's been quite a month since we've gathered last, and it's just good to come here today to give you some of the news of what's happening here in the life of Royal Oak First United Methodist Church. Always like to start out with kind of my theme of Mask of the Month. I'm sporting this new Green Bay Packer mask provided for me by Kathy Seidler from the church. My good friend Craig Sleeman wondered why I didn't have a Lions mask, because he said when you wear a Lions mask, your chances of catching anything go way down. But I did have to remind Craig that I was going to get a Lions mask, but they never make it for a full season and always fall apart in December. So I wear the Lions mask, or the Packers mask, because it was given to me by my friend Kathy Seidler. And what I love about this is she made one for the big fella. She put an extra inch on each side so that I can have that. But thank you, Kathy, for thinking of your pastor when you're doing that. Hey, one of the things that we've been able to do a little bit here in the last month is we've been cleaning out some of the spaces. Just like you've been cleaning out your houses, we've been cleaning out some of the spaces here around the church, and we've been going through hundreds of old bulletins. And while I've been going through the bulletins, we find these wonderful kind of bulletin bloopers from time to time, which is a reminder as to why editing matters. So I want to share with you some of the top 10 bulletin bloopers that we found in these corners of our church. So this is number 10 of the bulletin bloopers. It said this: the pastor would appreciate it if the ladies of the congregation would lend him their electric girdles for the pancake breakfast next Sunday morning. Spell check. That was before spell check. Number 9, the low self-esteem support group will meet Thursday at 7. Please use the back door. Right? Number 8, for those of you who have children and don't know it, we have a nursery downstairs. Commas matter. Number 7, the pastor will preach his farewell message, after which the choir will sing "Break Forth into Joy." Our number 6 bulletin blooper, the stewardship offertory, Jesus paid it all. You can't make this stuff up. Number 5, remember in prayer the many who are sick of our church and community. Remember in prayer the many who are sick of our church and community. Number 4 says, ladies, don't forget the rummage sale. It's a good chance to get rid of those things not worth keeping around the house. Bring your husbands. Number 3, peacemaking meetings canceled due to a conflict. Number 2, the sermon title this morning, Jesus Walks on Water. The sermon title tonight, Searching for Jesus. And finally, the last bulletin blooper that we found, this one cracks me up. The associate minister unveiled the church's new tithing campaign last Sunday. I upped my pledge, up yours. So those are the top 10 bulletin bloopers that we found while searching through old bulletins here in the last month. We like to start out and give you a little bit of update on what's happening here in the news of the church. Most important thing I want to let you know is we are beginning to enter into some reopening phases as we take counsel from the governor's office and the bishop's office around what it means to gather safely. We are adjusting some of the ways that we'll be gathering here in the next weeks. The first phase of that is going to be reopening the office building, reopening the office to bring our workers back into the church to be working here on a more full-time and regular basis. We'll begin that next Monday, or this coming Monday, October the 12th. We'll have office hours from 10 to 3, Monday through Thursday, which means you can call into the office during those times and you'll find a staff member, a member of our program team, or a pastor who will be able to take your call and respond to the needs and concerns that you might have. If you'd like to come into the building during that time, we simply ask that you call and make an appointment so that we know that you're coming. Folks have asked, will we be able to have groups in the church? And the answer to that is yes. And we'll work with Karen Calhoun to make your reservations for groups up to 15. The thing that's going to make this work is your help and your cooperation. Masks will be required as you enter the building. Social distancing is essential, so keep your spaces away from each other. And the hardest thing of all is a no hug zone for the time being. So if we can do that together, we look forward to opening the building. We'll be continue to make plans for the beginning of in-person indoor worship soon. So we ask that you check your email and watch your mail for more details on that coming up. But we're grateful to be reopening the office here coming this next Monday. Updates on our caring ministry. Please, please, please keep us informed of folks in our community who are in need of extra prayer, extra calls, people who have been sick, in the hospital or experiencing some sign of loss or transition. You can always call or email Danielle Moody with any prayer concerns or needs that you have. Sign up as well for our weekly prayer concerns list. On Mondays, starting this next week, we will be mailing out a list of people on our prayer list. And if you'd like to sign up for that prayer list, you go to our website, and there you will find an ability to get on that list so you can get that information every Monday about who is in the hospital, whose family members are in need of extra prayer, love, and concern. And finally, on our caring ministries, we're always in need of people who are willing to make 2 to 3 phone calls a month in order to check in with our many members. That phone call is often the lifeline between us and the church. So please, if you'd be willing to be one of our caring callers, again, let Danielle Moody know in the office of your willingness to serve in this simple but profound capacity. Always like to let you know what's happening in our children and youth ministries. Confirmation classes started this week for 8th and 9th graders. If you have an 8th or a 9th grader and don't know about that, please contact Bridget Nelson. Youth group meets every Sunday from 3 to 4:30 on the church lawn. We'll be doing that again for the month of October. So get your young people out to the lawn. We have anywhere between 20 and 30 young people out there each and every Sunday night playing games and then going into discussions about where God is at work in the midst of their lives. Holy Cow, our Church on Wednesday program for our elementary age students, will meet twice during the month of October on the 14th and 28th from 5 to 5:45. Again, that's out on the church lawn. Please bring your kids for a time of games and fellowship and some music as we just find creative ways to do that. And don't forget, our CYF program has put together a Sunday school on the go packet for the month of October. You can call the church office to get that so that you can be doing Sunday school at home while you're watching church on Sunday mornings. Last month, we talked about our new church signs, and we went over some of those slogans that didn't make the cut, but I'm proud to pronounce that we have some new signs that we're ready to unveil. Our first one is the "Don't Stop Believin'," that we're still in this together. So don't stop believing. You want to put that up on your yard. The second one is in support of our students and teachers. It reminds people that we are praying for our students and teachers during this time. My kids are doing school online, and some days it's going really well, and some days it's kind of a challenge. And teachers are really trying to figure out their best ways to do this. We want to send a signal to our community that we stand with those for whom this time is, well, just a unique challenge. Grab one of these signs and put it on your front yard and let those students and teachers know we pray for them. And as always, we like to keep our standard message available for you to put on your front lawn at any time. God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. These signs right now are available at the tower entrance. You can stop by and pick them up anytime, as well as make a call to the church office, and we'd be happy to bring them over to you. Well, typically, if we were gathering in person, the month of October, we would start to turn to our generosity campaign. It would be 4 weeks where we would talk about how you can support the work and ministry here in the life of the church. Well, because we aren't gathering, we are going to withhold that season for a couple of weeks. But in order to get ready for that, it's a good time to take a look at what the financial health of our congregation is. And in order to do that today, I'm really grateful to have two of our church leaders, Tim Rickman and Craig Sleeman, who are going to give us some conversation about how we're doing with the financial health of the church. Take it away, guys.
Good evening. I'm Tim Rickman. I'm here with Craig Sleeman, and we're here to talk tonight about the church finances. As Jeff introduced, Craig sent a letter recently to update you on how things are going as a congregation, but we thought it'd be worthwhile to spend a little bit of time here tonight walking through it. So we want to share kind of how the church has been doing this year, how it's responded to the kind of unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic, and what we think might happen in the remainder of the year. But, Craig, as we get started, I was kind of thinking, even sitting here today, the church we've been online for worship service something like 28, 29 weeks. And it's almost hard to remember back in those early days, when we got the notice as a parent with kids in school that, March 12th, I think it was, Governor Whitmer announced the closure of the schools, and we thought, okay, 3 weeks. It's just going to be 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, that was some time back, and we thought it would just be brief introduction to that, and then we'd be back at it. And then now we're here, and we have to start wearing the mask and things like that. And I would point out that Jeff made in his earlier comment about the Lions mask, and I just want him to know that I had one in the parking lot, but like so many Lions receivers, I dropped it on the way in, so I don't have it with me right now.
Yeah.
But,
well, even as we go back further in terms of the finances of the church and how we were thinking last year, the church over the last few years has been growing, and it's been an amazing story, multiplying in attendance, particularly in young families, and the church budget was increasing along with that growth. As we entered the year of 2020, the budget that was set last fall, approved by the congregation, and the pledging that was made to support it, topped just over $1 million, the largest budget in this church's history. But it reflected the planned increases in pastoral staff, investing in the children, youth, and family ministries, increasing the share of apportionments, which we dropped off during the renovation and the rebirth program. So all of that was incorporated into our anticipation heading into 2020. But of course, it was just, even starting in January, our plans changed. So the end of January is when Jeff stepped out for his renewal leave. We increased Myra to full-time status as a pastor in February. Then we were announcing a part-time interim pastor in James Cogman. And I remember announcing his arrival on March 1st there from the sanctuary. And it was 2 weeks later, the building was closed. And that's how it's been since then. So the world was kind of rocked, and a little bit for us month after month into the year.
yeah, and we really did go into this year very optimistic. As you pointed out, first time we had over $1 million budget, and that was as a result of a number of years of astronomical growth and the need for getting added staff to take care of our new families. And we expected, based on that we would need that budget to carry out this year 2020, and we were just very optimistic going in. And last year we met our budget, and we had an unbelievable December, which put us over the top, and we finished up in the black. And we fully expected to be able to meet the budget this year as we laid it out.
Yeah, and so, of course, when COVID did hit and the quarantine started, the church did respond pretty rapidly, moving services online, which I know was a challenge at first, an entire focus of so many staff members over the course of each week to do that. In parallel, things were continuing on, like the As We Gather program for the homeless in our community. Many of your staff members shifted what they were doing to making sandwiches so that volunteers didn't need to come in and do that. And of course, Jennifer and others worked to identify areas to cut that weren't needed with the building being closed. But as we'll see, a lot of the expenses of operating the church really maintain, even despite the fact that the building is closed. So basically, Craig will walk through a lot of the numbers here over the next few minutes, and they reflect all of those things. Our priorities heading into this year, our response to the pandemic, and how we've continued up to now. So, do You want to walk through some of the numbers, Greg?
Sure. In every year, we have a budget that we like to spread out over the year, and it's pretty steady, the expenditures, because we have consistent payroll numbers. And other than items like utilities, where you have, obviously during the colder months, you have a higher gas bill. In the summer, you might have some seasonal lawn keeping, things like that. But pretty much the budget number is straight and level all through the year. And again, other than maybe some insurance expenses that we have to pick up on a quarterly basis, we can plan that out, and we expect that. This year, we did have some bumps in that road because we had some unexpected salary changes with the personnel. But other than that, we can pretty much predict that, and we have that laid out as expected. The income side, though, is just the opposite. That's really a roller coaster. So you might want to think of a Cedar Point ride on the roller coaster, because we start out in January, and we come from that high of December as far as budget numbers and income. And we're fairly steady those first few months of the winter. Attendance is good, and the giving is steady. But then when we enter the months of the summer, we really have a downfall as far as the income, because people are away, and we're not receiving the regular income. We don't have the plate income that we normally have with the attendance. So that roller coaster takes that dip down. And if you're at Cedar Point and you like the roller coasters, that's a good ride. But if you're a little scared of those, that takes the dip. But that happens every year.
Every year, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at charts that we've been studying back the last 4 or 5 years, and they look almost the same. It's sort of that roller coaster through the year. Yep.
So you come out of August, and that's where we're at right now as far as the reports, even though we're into September here. We're always showing a deficit as far as the income versus the expenditures. Again, the expenses at a level spot, and then the income is considerably down for the summer months. And then as we get into September, we start picking that up, and then we always, fortunately, faithfully, and we get the November and December, we're back at it, and then if we have a good December, then we're in the black. But it's a scary ride, and as I mentioned, that an analogy to a roller coaster, it's not fun unless you like those dips and thrills and spins around the corner. So this year, just as you point out in every year, we're down. At the end of August, we're down. If we don't bring in the PPP loan, which I'll talk about in just a minute, we're down close to $170,000, which is a scary number to think. But in years past, we've been down those numbers. Last year I said we met our budget and made more. We were down $100,000 at this point last year. This year, much more, but that's to be expected with all things considered with the income. But people have held fast. We've gotten the regular contributors. I think the biggest thing we're missing is just those people that can't make it here, and they have a habit of giving when they're here. And if they're not here, they can't give. So we're encouraging to do the online, to mail in their giving, and follow that path as well. But I mentioned the PPP loan, and that is the personal protection program that was run through the federal government. It's intended to help out the small businesses and charities like ourselves. And we took advantage of it, and it's worked out very well for us. And even though I'm sure there's some people out that didn't work well for them, or they had trouble getting it, I think between the connections we had with the bank, but more importantly, between some gentlemen by the name of Jeff Vickers and John Boyce, and then most importantly, Jennifer Tripoli here in the office, they put the numbers together and made this work, and we got our application to the tune of $104,000. We received a loan from the federal government, and that provided a huge cash flow help for us during the summer months. But one of the main things that you had to do, and when you get the loan requirements, is you either had to use it for staff or personnel, or you could use it also to pay rent. Now, fortunately, we own our building, so we didn't need that, but it came through so we could keep and maintain our staff during this period that our expenses were steady, but our income was down. So that, when you combine with that figure I mentioned earlier about the 170,000 deficit, using that PPP loan, we're actually only at about 70,000, which is even better than last year, which is surprisingly. And that's also a part of the office looking at what expenses could be cut and what couldn't be. And certainly there's some areas that we're not using the building, so there were some expenses down on that. But we maintain that staff, and I think that was very important to do, because as we look, again, optimistically to turning around, to getting back out of this, that we want to hit the ground running, and we need the staff to do that. They've been working very hard in the meantime, but we need them in their roles to get this started again.
Yeah, the good news is, as you, with respect to the staff, we were able to maintain the employment of our team during this difficult time through the PPP loan. And we say loan, but as many of you know, in fact, it will turn into, maybe the term is a grant, but it'll be forgiven as a loan, provided that we follow the terms, which include using it to cover payroll. And so we do expect that will be forgiven, which means it has been a significant help this year to the operating budget. So it's been good that we were able to secure that.
Yeah, I think we're very confident that loan will turn into that grant back up.
So a couple of maybe summary points as we kind of wrap this bit is, the one thing also to know about kind of the payroll and personnel in terms of the budget in our church, and like many churches, it's basically about 2/3 of the budget every year. So in addition to that, we've got things like building maintenance and some of the programming related costs and apportionments and things like that. But the bulk of it's personnel, as in many organizations, and it's also the most important resource in terms of turning the mission of the church into action. The other thing is that our personnel cost was higher in the first part of the year than it will be in the second part of the year. All of these things are being weighed as we kind of look into the forecast through the fall. And so while on the one hand we're cautiously optimistic, I think that as a congregation always does, is sort of steps up into the latter part of the year into December to increase the giving. So we're hopefully and prayerfully anticipating that. But at the same time, we're a little bit concerned because of the fact that the building hasn't been open, and Christmas services, will look different this year. The team is still working on it, and we don't know, if we'll get the kind of loose plate, offerings that would normally come in. So that's kind of where we stand as we look out the remainder of the year.
Yeah, and that's, again, that cautious optimism that we have. Jeff mentioned earlier that we're trying to get the building open a little bit at a time, smaller groups get in, but I don't know that we'll have a full Christmas crowd that we can count on, and to believe that we'll get another $180,000 December like we did last year, that's where, that optimistic has to be tempered a little bit, and we have to be realistic that we're going to have to count on everybody to pull together and get us through this year. And then we have to then turn around and look at next year as far as shaping a budget for next year, and that's part of that campaign that, again, Jeff mentioned earlier, that we're going to have to address, and knowing the figures from this year will help us formulate next year.
And why don't we, as we kind of wrap this, just talk a little bit as we turn toward even the next year in the budgeting. So this year, I think we're taking an even deeper look at, not only the current spend, but the future spend, to kind of predict into the future. Now, again, we would ordinarily want to look at trends of attendance for the last 5 years and giving and our expenses and everything else. And we're doing that, but it's hard to predict the future based on the past in terms of this data. So, we're separately looking at all kinds of other things. In what ways does our staffing, our org structure need to evolve in the way we're operating now with, partially online, things like that. But I'll say that, as Craig mentioned, in a business, we might look at scenario planning into the future. What does the economy look like? What does our revenue look like, and our expenses, and construct an algebra problem and try and populate all the variables. And here in a church, though, we add something that's a little bit harder to calculate, which is our faith. There's a lot of uncertainties, but there's at least one certainty, and that is if we prayerfully seek discernment in how we're developing the budget, work hard to, be good stewards of what we've received, that we fully expect that God will be with us along this journey. And to quote a well-known Christian financial advisor, I like this to say, pray like it all depends on God, but work like it all depends on you. And so that's what we're trying to do in this season as we move into the next year. So,
And I agree totally with that, because if you look at it strictly from a business standpoint, we would have to take the numbers and crunch those, but we have that extra factor that most businesses don't have, and that's our faith, and they carry forward on that. So we'll be leaning on that as we reach into the new year.
yeah, so we've spent a lot of time talking about financials, and I hope it's been helpful. I realize it can, maybe it's kind of boring at times, but it's important. We definitely wanted to share with you how the church is going. We basically wanted to let you know how we've been doing this year, what are some of the concerns or anxieties we have as we enter the fall, but also especially, I think most importantly, express gratitude for those who've been able to keep up during this challenging time. And we certainly look forward to seeing you again, and hopefully in these coming months, as Jeff has described, we'll be able to do that. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us or the church office. Well, thanks everybody. Hope to see you soon. Bye.
Royal Oak First is a church with an amazing legacy of music. Its many choirs, the large events such as Feast of Carols and other programs, its choir camp, and its music guild have been a bedrock of this congregation over generations. At the center of the music program is our music director. And this summer, in the midst of a pandemic and the church being closed, we hired a new person to fill that role. I'm happy tonight to introduce you more fully to Mr. Tim Shaner. I had an opportunity to interview Mr. Shaner this past week and learned about his background, the challenges of entering this position in such an unusual time of social distancing, and his hopes for the future. But let's start at the beginning.
I was raised in the Catholic Church. I always have this image of me and my 7 brothers and sisters, like this sort of line of ducks following my parents into the church. During the typical ministry season, my folks sang in the church choir. We would sit right behind my dad in the tenor section, and he managed to keep the 7 of us in line just through his gruff but lovable demeanor. So it was then that I was just really interested and enjoyed listening to the choir and watching the director who directed from the organ. And I have these sort of vague images of him shaking his head and directing like that, which if you're playing the keyboard, that's how you direct the choirs.
Over much of his career, Tim has been both a high school music teacher as well as a church music director. I asked him how he moved from the Catholic Church and teaching in the public schools over to directing, initially at Orchard Methodist Church.
It sort of came at the right time for me. I was working at the Catholic Church at that time. I was working at West Bloomfield High School for my full-time job. And one day, so I was sitting in my office, and 2 of the teachers who I worked with came in there, and they just threw a choir folder on my desk. And they said, "You looking for a job?" And my immediate reaction was, "No, I'm not looking for a choir." They said, "Well, just take a look at this folder. We're looking for a choir director, and we know you're comfortable where you are." And so I did. I looked through the music that was in that folder, and I was really impressed with the type of music that they were tackling each week. So that was the first thing that attracted me. So the other thing that attracted me to the Methodist Church was just how open and welcoming it was, and judgment-free when it came to a lot of the things that were sort of turning me off from the strictures of the Catholic Church. And it turned out to be a really good decision.
I asked him what it's like to start a job, in particular this job, during a time of quarantine, church closure, and online worship.
What's it like arriving at a new job in the middle of like a quarantine and all this social distancing? Is this sort of what you expected, or?
I've been doing it the same way for 20, 25 years. And by the same way, that means the interaction between people, direct interaction, being able to hear them and immediately react and instruct. The social aspect of the choir, which is so important. And having to arrive and then immediately go into this quarantine and go into this virtual worship, I still feel a little unmoored because what I've known for so long, for decades, doesn't doesn't apply. It doesn't fit. Sensing that the choir members are starting to really, I think it's affecting them a little bit. In the conversations I'm having with them, they miss the social and the musical aspect. It feeds them in a certain way, and they're just missing that nourishment, if you will.
We also talked about his hopes for the future.
One of the things that that's been on my mind, and I don't know how we're gonna do it this year, but is pulling off my first Feast of Carols. That's going to require that I know the abilities of this graded choir program that we have, and working with all the directors, with Daphne and with Jennifer and with Neil. But between the youth choirs and the adult choir and the band and the bells and any other kind of things that we can put together, that's one that I'm really looking forward to. Maybe seeing what's happened in the past, and then I have the privilege of putting my own thumbprint on it too, and see what it can become. But I think it'll be okay for us to just every now and then do something completely different. But that's something I feel I need to collaborate with others on. But it's a great team. It really is. There's lots of people who can add a lot of things, and then I can take my part and execute to make it happen.
Hey, I get a great opportunity here this evening to introduce you to one of our brand new team members here at Royal Oak First. Nothing like starting a job in the middle of a global pandemic, and especially a job that usually involves groups of people and coming together, and yet Tim Shaner said yes. He really believed this was the right place at the right time, and not just for this moment, but for the future of what this church has. So we want to take a minute here today and introduce this face and this name to you, because we just believe that Tim's going to be a big part of what's happening here at Royal Oak First for lots of years. So Tim, welcome. We're really glad that you're here at Royal Oak First.
Just so let's keep it on the record that I said yes before the pandemic. So let's make sure we're aware of that. But thank you for your welcome.
He was our interim.
Yeah,
He
right.
said yes before
good.
the pandemic.
I didn't know.
And he's back. Tim, just tell us in just a little bit of what intrigues you about this place and why you think this is the right place to bring your gifts and your talents at this time.
The first thing that drew me to the interim gig was just a dear friend of mine who I know has some connection here, Katrina Van Manen. She reached out and said, we're looking for someone for this, and she and I spoke a little bit, and she said, I think you'd be a good fit there. And then you started telling me about the history of music here, and I, the little musician in me started going, oh, okay, this sounds like a pretty good deal. But the more time I spent with the people, the more time I spent with the music ministry and the staff and everything, that it, sometimes things just click, and sometimes you kind of grow into it. But this one was almost immediate. I could tell there was it was a good match. So it still feels like it is.
It feels really good to us too.
Good.
So we're really grateful that you're here. Tell us about sacred music and why it's your gig, and what you kind of hope we'll experience here together.
So I'll start with choral music, because that's kind of my main jam. Is that what you said? We're talking about jams right now? Because most people do jam to Sir Thomas Tallis, right?
He's on my iPad.
Good.
We don't have those anymore.
So growing up in the Catholic Church, there were 7 little ducklings following mom and dad, and I was 5th of 7. And they brought us into Mass every Sunday, if you don't mind my saying, religiously. But they both sang in the choir. And that choir at the time would sit in the pews and then stand up to go sing. And in the back row was my dad. And so we were in the row directly behind my dad, so he could turn and do what you needed to do with 7 kids. But we'd always get there a half hour before Mass started for the choir to warm up. So mom and dad were warming it up, and they'd practice whatever music they were getting ready for Mass, and There was just something about it that was just really attractive to me. I watched the organist was directing from the keyboard, and there was just I'll never forget, and I've had to adopt this many times myself, I'll never forget him directing with his head, right? It's just something you had to do because your hands are on the manuals. And now I've conducted from the keyboard. It's not ideal, and that was another thing that attracted me to the church is that resource is amazing. But having conducted choirs from the keyboard myself, I learned that, not so much now, but I learned that the hair, they would be able to follow the hair. Even
Did you used to have some?
I had some, yeah.
Yeah.
Not too long ago,
Oh, yeah.
actually, yeah. That's another fun story. But even when my choir members got to know me pretty well, they could, even with an eyebrow, they knew what that meant, or just a, this and that, or a smile, and just use little things. If they know you, they know what it means. So, so that gave me a love for the sacred music. Went on to music education, went into choral conducting after that, and just continued to feed that passion. That became primary, but now I think it's kind of a co-love between the traditional, what we would call traditional sacred music, and the contemporary that has, that I remember it starting with the, people getting all upset about the guitars in church, and that's, we thought for sure that there was going to be fire and brimstone. But that kind of attracted me as well, and when I finally got my hands on the ability to be a part of that and lead it, I never thought I'd see myself doing some of the things that I've done in a service. So, but an equal attraction for different reasons, for different kinds of music. So
Tim, either as a conductor or a singer, 'cause I know you've also been hired gun in some of our major church choirs in this community. So you've got a phenomenal voice as well. Either conducting or being in a choir, what if you were to think of just one of those standout moments where you were where the music and the moment and the goosebumps and you're like, yeah, what was it? What was going on?
There was a tradition at Orchard United Methodist Church. I spent 11 years
Great
there
church.
as it's a terrific place. Spent 11 years there as their choir director, I was the music director there. There was a tradition of the third Sunday of Advent would be our music Sunday, and it was typical that we'd present a cantata or some some serious music. And I decided one year we were going to sing the Magnificat, which is the Song of Mary, but we did two different versions of it. We did the traditional Bach Magnificat, which is a really monumental, difficult piece, so I really challenged our choir in that one. But we followed it up with Robert Ray's Gospel Magnificat. So the same text, but two different ways. Are you familiar with the name Fred Hammond?
Oh, yeah.
Fred Hammond's daughter was a student of mine at that time at West Bloomfield High School. And she was very sort of like, no, I can't do this, but I convinced her to come in and sing the solos. You either can sing gospel or you can't.
Right.
But when she's just started wailing and doing her thing on this Sunday morning, and then come to realize that Fred Hammond is in the back row of the church watching his daughter sing this thing. The Bach made me do that too, because it was just such a monumental accomplishment for the choir. But then we actually clapped on 2 and 4.
You got him there?
I got him there, and it was just, it was a really tremendous moment. That's one of many, but that's the one that sticks out in my mind, yeah.
Oh, we can't wait to have some of those moments here together. Tim, what an interesting time to be starting a journey with a congregation in this era of social distancing.
Sure.
We've had some conversations, but just share with people just some of the ways you've already thought about maybe the ways that we can creatively create music during this very interesting time.
So I think think we have to find some ways to the band is doing it now, but I'm thinking of the choir now, and I do have some ideas just about hymn leadership. We need to get our choir members back and connected physically. Singing is a particular challenge. Singing into a microphone is far different than singing just out. There's more energy. There's further projection of the things that are a little bit dangerous to us right now. So a choir needs to be physically connected, so that's kind of tricky for us right now. But we can use microphones in a creative way to kind of create that connection a little differently. So we could have maybe 4, 5, let's find the right limit so we can still have them connected, to be able to maybe start recreating some of the music that's been done in the past.
That's awesome.
I think that with some practice, I'd like to see if we can get some, if it works, it's a really tremendous thing, but surrounding the virtual congregation, actually in the church, where we might be able to have a greater number of people singing, each of them mic'd or pairs on a mic, and try to do, it doesn't have to be complicated music, but do something simple that would just create a sense of space, a sense of welcome, even if I think people who are watching these virtual services like to see the church, they like to see the building. So the more we can connect our viewers, our viewers, like we're on channel 7 at 9, but the people who are worshiping in their living room or wherever they are, to connect them more to the building, and then try to connect them more to the ministry as they remember it, but maybe just in a different way. And it's great to be able to interface with Erica, who has some great ideas, and I know you and I are going to have some conversation about things that maybe can do just a little bit differently, but in the Rofum way.
Awesome.
Right?
Well, we sure appreciate all of our teachers, and we have church with a deep bench of educators
and musicians.
And
Boy.
musicians and musical educators.
Boy,
and
yeah.
We're just really blessed. And Tim, thank you for coming here and finding us and sticking it out in a weird time with lots of transitions internally, global pandemic externally, and it just feels like the right place at the right time.
The circumstances were perfect.
Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you,
God
Jen.
loves you. There's nothing you can do
Nothing I
about
can
it.
do about that.
Enjoy the journey with us. Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Make sure you reach out and find Tim's email on the church website and send him a welcome note and let him know that you're glad he's here. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Yeah. Friends, we like to take a minute each month to recognize the people who will be having a birthday. So for all of you who have a birthday in the month of October, along with your pastor, whose birthday is today, we want to wish you a very happy birthday. We're glad that God gifted you to this world. So as the names come by, be looking to see if any of these are your friends, people you know and love at church, and take special note and reach out to them this month and wish them a happy birthday. Happy birthday. We're really glad you're here. Well, I'm here on the couch with my colleague and friend in ministry, the Reverend Myra Moreland. And if you've been following Royal Oak First News, you know that Myra has been away for the month of September, going to school. She's back to school, and we were able to get her to take a break today to come on in and just kind of catch us up on how things are going. So, Myra, how are you?
I'm good. I have to tell you, I'd forgotten how much there is to do at school.
Well, bring us up to date. Remind us where you're going, what you're doing, and what you're pursuing.
I'm in the Masters of Divinity program at Vanderbilt University, Vanderbilt Divinity School. I did my undergrad there. It's a great spot. Of course, it's virtual. I mean, I say I'm off at school. I'm in my bedroom. I'm in virtual school like everybody else.
Along with your grandkids, right?
And the dog. And
Yeah.
Yes. So luckily, we do have mute, and I'm able to mute. But it's great stuff. Because I was privileged, really blessed to be able to take some time away. I sort of went for the gusto, and I'm taking 15 hours, 5 classes, which in graduate school is a lot. It's a lot of reading and a lot of writing.
Bless
yes,
you.
yes. And I know sometimes I feel like there's so much stuff floating around, but it's really wonderful. I'm taking Hebrew Bible, I'm taking Global Christianities, Foundations of Theology. I'm taking a great class, which I will just be bringing back here ad nauseum, I'm sure, called Leading the Congregation. And it's all about, again, finding the soul of a congregation and how to really help a congregation grow in God's work. It's great stuff. And it's taught by he's a retired bishop, Bishop Joe Pennell, a wonderful man. I really love that class. And then I'm taking this really exciting, it's called Theology, Economics, and Labor.
You know how to party, girl.
Yeah, don't I? Don't I? It's my advisor's class, and he really wanted me to come into it. It's great stuff, but it's about the intersection, obviously, between theology and capitalism, neoliberal capitalism. Heavy stuff, but interesting and fun. So I'm having a good time. Thank you. I'm having a great time.
What class? I mean, they're all really great, but like, which one is just kind of just capturing your heart? You're like, oh, I needed to know this.
Well, this started for me. I was doing course of study as a licensed local pastor at Duke Divinity School, and I took a class in global Christianity, and this is a much more in-depth class, and I do love it. As we see the formation of Christianity, but much more than that. You get to read and hear about sort of Christianity as it formed in other parts of the world. I'm particularly fascinated, I think I mentioned this to you, about early Christians in China. I mean, who knew that in the 600s, the Chinese Christians were just exploding across China, and partly because they were able to embrace the narrative of Jesus in their own culture. And so they have what they call the Sutras of Jesus, which is the story of Jesus as told in the Chinese culture, and it's beautiful. It's just beautiful.
Tell us one thing from that's just, like it just warms your heart, expands your mind, something that will just change the way that you bring God's word to us.
The 4th Sutra of Jesus begins, and I won't remember the quote exactly, but something like, there are many views and many paths to find God. And the God is in the wind, and he is in everyone, and he is everywhere. And that's just a great piece of theology, and it's all part of my personal theology, that when we find the God inside of ourselves, we're able to see the God in everyone around us. But they articulate it so well, as the Chinese do.
Are there some ways to do some extra stuff beyond class?
Oh, there's lots. I'm not there yet.
Cool. No, that's cool. I just was wondering.
No, there are tons of lectures,
Sure, I remember.
And as I get a little more settled, I hope to be able to do more of them. But no, there often. Now, what we're finding, and here's how we're battling the pandemic as students. And it's interesting to be the oldest one in your class. Many of these students are right out of undergrad. But we have a cohort page on Facebook where everybody comes on and talks. We have a Zoom every Saturday morning just to chat, just to see how everybody's doing, to talk theologically about some of the things that we're hearing and how do we take these. We're not all preachers. Matter of fact, most of the class are not preachers and are not going to be preachers. But there are a group of us who are. And so we talk about how we take this back into our churches and the kinds of things that we're doing, and everybody else is talking about, again, how you change the world from the nonprofit side and the economic side. And it's just interesting to see all these voices coming together. It's pretty amazing.
Well, we have, I mean, it's hard to believe it's just been 5 weeks, but we miss your voice. For those that don't know, you can catch Myra on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 12 o'clock. In the midst of all her studies, she still takes a break to check in with us on her Facebook page, which you can keep up with some of the stuff that she's learning and experiencing. Myra, as we close out, just talk to your church and tell them what's on your heart these days.
Wow. Well, again, I sit in great gratitude for this opportunity to be able to do this. It just doesn't happen very often. And if you'd asked me 6 months ago if I would have been able to do this, I just never even imagined the possibility. But part of what I'm trying to learn is how I can bring these new ideas and these expansions back here to the local church. I was asked in a paper to talk about my call, and in 6 weeks of divinity school, how that call might have changed or been refined. And what I wrote is this, that not only do I believe I'm called into ministry at the local church, but I believe I'm called to challenge what we have always thought was right. I believe I'm called to muddy the waters a little. I believe I'm called to expand what we think we know and what we think we believe, so that it can include more of the community and the world around us in very positive ways. And I know that might sound a little rebellious. You're thinking, what are you doing in Nashville or at Vanderbilt? But I really feel God calling me to expand my own mind and then figure out how I can bring that back into the local church here at Royal Oak. So,
Well, we'll jump in the water with you. It's a deal. Well, gosh, we could talk theology all day because it's something we both love, and I know we'll have lots of opportunities to do that. But I also know that that lots of other people will benefit from those conversations as well. I know we'll get to see you a little more often here, hopefully this fall. But it's just good to let you spend some time with your church today.
yeah.
Thank you, Myra.
Well, can I do one last thing?
Yeah.
A special thank you to all the folks who are pitching in and making this possible by getting the work done, because, work still is happening. Lots of things are still going on here, but I know Bridget and Danielle, Pam, who's leading the Tuesday night class for me, all the things that I have been doing there, and they haven't missed a beat. Karen, Sam, everybody who's really pulling in, Jennifer Tripoli, to make this possible. It's appreciated. It's much appreciated.
Well, come back and mess us up. That's what we're asking for. Thanks, Myra. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah. Friends, thanks for joining us tonight. It's always good to find these ways to connect. But the truth is, we miss you. We miss seeing you. We miss all the ways that we can be connected. So we'll do our best to use these technologies to check in with each other, but we hope and know that the day is coming when we'll be gathering again face to face. But the one thing we can do in this season and every season is to continue to pray for each other. As we close tonight in prayer, you'll see some of the names of the people from our congregation who continue to need your extra special prayer support. If you would be moved to take those prayers and reach out to them with a card, a note, or a special phone call, well, I know it would make Christ's love real to them. Thank you for joining us this evening. And I ask you to join me in a moment of prayer. Gracious God, we thank you for all the ways that you continue to do your work in and through us. In these interesting and unprecedented times, you continue to help your church be the church for each other. For all in our midst who need healing, bring it. For any who need hope, may they find it. For any who need a knot at the end of their rope, would you help them tie it? Thank you for gathering us here today. And be with us in the days, weeks, and months to come. We ask all this in the name of Christ, your love present with us now and always. Amen. Thank you for tuning in tonight. We love you. We really do. Peace.